It's easy to think of slavery as something that's been consigned to the past, an ugly stain from history that we've now moved beyond. However, it's a problem that still exists today, with the United Nations estimating that over 40 million people around the world are currently in some form of slavery. Just as it's easy to think of slavery as being a relic of the past, we'd be wrong to think of it as something that only occurs overseas. While, by its nature, it's impossible to put an exact figure on how many people in the UK are currently living in conditions of slavery, it's believed it could be anywhere from 10,000 to 136,000 people. The Buy with Confidence Business Approval Scheme is well placed to help in the fight against this modern-day scourge. We recently held a modern-day slavery training day for Buy with Confidence auditors, which included speakers from the Devon and Cornwall Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner, the South West Regional Organised Crime Unit, the charity Unseen, and Devon County Council. This gave trading standards officers from various authorities the chance to learn more about the issues involved in modern-day slavery and what they could do about it. It also helped us in our work with those organisations to ensure that Buy with Confidence has robustly incorporated working against modern-day slavery into its mission. This includes educating our auditors around the country about the issues involved, making modern-day slavery an aspect of the vetting process for members joining the scheme, and providing information to our current members on what they can look out for. The definition of slavery used nowadays is broader than simply one person owning another. In 2015, the government passed the Modern Day Slavery Act, which sought to define and create offences that reflect how slavery exists in Britain today. The Modern Day Slavery Act 2015 defines modern-day slavery as the recruitment, movement, harbouring or receiving of children, women or men through the use of force, coercion, abuse of vulnerability, deception or other means for the purpose of exploitation. The definition is intentionally broad to ensure that it covers a wide variety of ways one person or group can curtail another's freedom, whether by means of violence, intimidation, financial control, mental coercion, or otherwise. The National Crime Agency breaks modern-day slavery down into several categories: sexual exploitation, forced labour, domestic servitude, organ harvesting, child-related crimes such as child sexual exploitation, forced begging, illegal drug cultivation, organised theft, and related benefit frauds, forced marriage and illegal adoption if other constituent elements are present. While Buy with Confidence auditors and businesses should be aware of all these types of exploitation, it is the various forms of forced labour they are most likely to come across. The first and perhaps most important thing to remember about forced labour is that it is not necessarily hidden away behind closed doors. People whose job may give them a public-facing role in places such as nail bars and hand car washes may be being coerced behind the scenes. In other cases, labourers or members of work gangs, who may appear to simply be employees, actually have little control over their own lives. It is also important to remember that while some sectors, such as fruit picking, may have more of a reputation for forced labour, it can occur in all sorts of businesses in many different trade sectors. Likewise, all sorts of people can find themselves in conditions of slavery, and it is not limited to a particular gender, ethnicity, immigration status, or age. Despite some people's perception of modern-day slavery as being largely about foreign-born people who've been illegally trafficked into the UK, many of those rescued from slavery in recent years have been British-born. Unfortunately, all this means it is feasible that people you come across in your professional or personal lives could be modern-day slaves. As a result, it is vital to keep your eyes open to the signs and know what to do if you have suspicions. There are a variety of ways someone can exert control over others, not all of which are easy to spot. Modern-day slavery can encompass a variety of means of coercion. Some of these may be material, such as the removal of passports or ensuring someone has little or no access to money. Some physical, such as the threat or commission of violence, and some mental, such as playing on a distrust of the authorities or making someone feel they have no other option than to do what they're told by their abuser. This can often be so effective that the person being controlled may not see themselves as a victim at all. Indeed, they may even believe that their abuser is their friend or protector. Cases that have come to light in recent years include a British college cleaner who had been trafficked into the UK and was working up to 20 hours a day for virtually no money. She told nobody about this because she had been told that her children back in her home country would be killed if she did. In another case, a man who was eventually jailed for modern-day slavery offences claimed to be helping the homeless. But he was actually forcing them to work for free in his takeaways while making them live in terrible conditions, feeding them leftovers and beating them if they didn't comply. He had intentionally looked for vulnerable people, offered them what initially looked like a leg up from their previous situation of living on the street, but then controlled and exploited them once he'd become what he termed their landlord. At our training day, we spoke to Gemma Kirby from the South West Regional Organised Crime Unit about what they're doing to disrupt modern-day slavery.
So what I describe isn't necessarily unique to the South West Regional Organised Crime Unit, but we are heavily involved in the prevention and disruption of modern-day slavery. Modern-day slavery will only successfully be tackled through partnership working and a collaborative approach, and that's what the regional crime units were set up to do. I work on one of the disruption teams that's part of the South West ROCI, and we were set up to work with partner agencies to disrupt and dismantle organised crime through effective intelligence sharing and employing a wide range of tactics and powers across law enforcement. So although the police will have the primacy of a modern slavery investigation, partner agencies can be utilised as a means to build intelligence and start to disrupt the criminal activity. So we carry out visits to businesses around the prevent and protect agendas. These are welfare visits that are usually conducted by consent. We take a multi-agency approach to these visits, so we will invite other agencies along, such as Fire, the Gang Masters and Labour Abuse Authority, HMRC National Minimum Wage Team, the Health and Safety Executive, Environmental Health. We've all got roles to play in trying to combat modern slavery. And we can utilise their tactics in trying to address the issues with the business and trying to safeguard the employees. So whilst we undertake these visits, we complete an employee questionnaire. This is to capture information intelligence about the employees' travel, how they're employed, their employment conditions, accommodation, immigration status, things that might be indicators that they are victims of modern-day slavery. We then hope that this intelligence will feed into the bigger picture, information that's held by other agencies that will help identify victims of modern-day slavery and enable us to take the appropriate action to combat it. We've worked with a number of agencies, like I've said. So an example would be, we've worked with Avon and Somerset in obtaining a slavery and trafficking risk order, which prohibits the activities of an individual involved in a car wash site. When we went to these visits, we also took a multi-agency approach to these. So Unseen came along with us. Unseen is a charity that support victims of modern-day slavery. We also had Fire, and Fire were instrumental in closing down the site actually because people were living at the car wash itself, and the accommodation was way below standard and actually a fire hazard. So the fire service were able to serve a prohibition notice there and then, which closed down the business and enabled us therefore to try and safeguard those employees. This is work that that happens day in and day out across the region. And like I said at the beginning, this is not unique to the Southwest. It's a problem that is across the UK and is being addressed by regional crime units across the UK.
It can be difficult to spot the signs of modern-day slavery, and it can often be a case of needing to keep your eyes open for things that don't seem right or don't quite add up. Things to watch out for include workers who seem quiet and withdrawn, or who appear afraid or uncertain about answering questions. Alternatively, there may be a boss they look to in order to answer all questions, or who steps in whenever a question is asked. While there could be reasons for this, such as language barriers or legitimate chains of command, if it seems suspicious, it is worth getting further advice. It's also important to look beyond just how the workers act to other aspects of the business. For example, the mistreatment of the employees may extend to a disregard for health and safety, or making them live in terrible conditions. While this could just be a cavalier attitude to an employee's well-being, it may also betray a wider pattern of abuse. If your suspicions are raised in regard to modern-day slavery, these sorts of extraneous problems are particularly worth noting, as they could become the legitimate focus for additional contact and investigation of the business. This could then give further opportunity to assess whether modern-day slavery is occurring, and to bring in specialists from the police or elsewhere if necessary.
There isn't really a typical victim of modern-day slavery, so people have to be alert to a wide range of signs that it might be taking place. So firstly, offenders will target an individual's vulnerability and their desire to make a better life for themselves and their family. Vulnerabilities could be things like drug and alcohol addiction, homelessness, a lack of education, inability to speak English, a lack of knowledge of the workers' rights in the UK, learning difficulties, physical disabilities, debt, a whole host of things that will make somebody vulnerable to exploitation. Another important point to make is that victims of modern slavery can be any age, gender, nationality or ethnicity. So it's very difficult to look at somebody and say because of X, Y and Z you could be a victim of modern day slavery. Indicators that people should be aware of and need to look out for fall into sort of general categories, but if we looked at behaviour, for example, if somebody comes across as being withdrawn, scared, not willing to talk to authorities, a lack of English, their appearance, they might come across as being slightly unkempt, malnourished, not have many possessions in terms of clothing, shoes, etc. They might present with health concerns. So somebody who works in a car wash working with chemicals might not have access to the required protective personal equipment and therefore could have burns, for example, or it might be injuries that have been inflicted by their exploiter in terms of physical abuse. And quite often those health concerns won't be addressed because they won't be able to go to a doctor, GP, hospital, etc. They'll be kept from doing that. Too many questions would be asked if they access that help. Work, so they could have inappropriate clothing, work long hours, little or no pay. You might find yourself in a situation where you always see the same person no matter what time of day you go into a business. Fear of the authorities, so not wanting to speak to the police or other people that might be able to help you. Debt bondage is a massive, massive issue. It might be debts that have been run up where somebody's been brought into the UK, so they are constantly trying to pay off the travel expenses that they owe their exploiter. Or it could be deductions that are taken out of somebody's pay for things like accommodation, food, travel to and from the accommodation to their work site. Those deductions mean that effectively they're never quite paying off that debt, so they're always in that control cycle with the exploiter. Accommodation could be overcrowded, poorly maintained. Windows might be blacked out, for example, so that neighbours can't see in and register what's happening and how many people are living somewhere or the condition of the property. Sort of lack of access to things like basic sanitation, toilets, showers, that type of thing. It might be as simple as the people living in a certain property might not know when the rubbish goes out, for example, so they put a lot of rubbish out on different days from everybody else, might indicate that they're not quite ingrained in society and don't quite know what's happening. A lot of people are living there that actually it's not a registered HMO property, it's not for that purpose, so might give an indication that something's not quite right there. A lack of control over things like identity documents. An exploiter might hold those to prevent somebody being able to leave the country or being able to move away from their exploiter. Not having access to their own money, their own bank account. So sometimes benefits and wages might be paid into an exploiter's bank account and the worker might be given a small amount as pocket money or indeed nothing at all. Transport to and from work, like I've already mentioned, that gives the exploiter an element of control. They know where that individual is, they know that they've turned up for work. And a lack of freedom, so being unwilling or scared to leave that situation. That might come down to not knowing how to leave, or the threat of violence and repercussions, whether or not that be against the individual who's directly being exploited or to a family member who might not even be in the United Kingdom. So there's a whole host of things that people could look out for. I think it often comes down to a gut feeling that something doesn't feel right about that individual's situation, and that you as an individual wouldn't put up with that yourself, so why should that person? I think that's the point at which you need to start sort of informing the authorities and somebody that can help and doing something with that information.
If you have concerns that someone may be a modern-day slave, there are numerous resources out there. And if you work for a local authority, your first port of call should be to find out what mechanisms your organisation has in place to deal with this. This is most likely to be through your Adult Services Department. However, if you don't work for a council, or you don't know whether it's worth flagging, you can phone the Modern Day Slavery Helpline run by the charity Unseen.
To report signs of modern day slavery, one of the first places you could go is a Modern Day Slavery Helpline. They are a helpline open all day, every day, with highly trained advisors on the end of the phone who can talk through your concerns and point you in the right direction. Another important thing is to know your organisation's policies and procedures and follow them. You could talk to a manager and ask them. If it is an emergency, the best thing to do is call 999.
We also spoke to the Gangmasters and Labour Abuse Authority about their work and how concerns can be reported to them.
My name's Mark Heath. I'm Deputy Director for Business Change at the Gangmasters and Labour Abuse Authority. We're the foremost investigative agency for tackling labour exploitation across the whole UK jobs market. We have the power to investigate modern slavery offences and look to work with our partners wherever we can tackle labour exploitation. At the current time, there's an estimated 10 to 13,000 victims of modern slavery within the UK at any one time, but many law enforcement partners believe the number to be higher than that. We rely on our partners to identify issues that we can investigate, and any issues within the workplace that can be identified should be reported to us. Issues of poor living conditions, where workers live and work on site, low pay for the work that's being done, document retention to include passport retention, or any evidence of malnourishment or mistreatment where workers might be coerced and forced into work. We can receive intelligence through the GLAA website. We can also receive intelligence on our reporting line of 0800 432 0804.
While the police around the country are proactively working to disrupt modern-day slavery operations, rescue those being abused, and bring the abusers to justice, quite often they will only know to intervene once suspicions have been raised by someone else. This is one of the ways Buy With Confidence can help. Our auditors are all trading standards professionals who routinely visit businesses both for the scheme and as part of their other work. This brings them into contact with a vast array of businesses that are unlikely to routinely attract attention from the police or any other authorities. It is also true that businesses that have been flagged to trading standards for other reasons, such as possible rogue trading offences, may be more likely to also engage in modern-day slavery offences. Therefore, ensuring our auditors know what to look out for can help both in their Buy With Confidence work and beyond.
We've been running a national policing reform programme in relation to modern slavery. we had £8.5 million from central government to transform the way that police respond to the crime of modern slavery. We're 2 years into that programme now, and we've just received notice that we're allowed a 1-year extension to keep this going. As part of that programme, I actually chair the Strategic Oversight Board, and what that means is that I bring together partners to check and see what we're delivering on with modern slavery, but obviously it's made me have a keen interest in this crime. It's one of the key areas that the Prime Minister still keeps her handle on, even though she started this as Home Secretary, so it shows the actual political commitment that we've got for modern slavery and trying to tackle this heinous crime. One of the things that's really important though, which I've always found interesting, is through the Modern Slavery Act that came out in 2015. It was about enabling large corporations with a £36 million turnover to produce actual statements that they didn't have human trafficking and modern slavery in their supply chain. Now, not all corporations had published theirs, and there was a really good piece of work by Unseen to have a look at which organisations had and hadn't done it, because there is no overall regulation of this. But what I realise is in Devon, Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly, the backbone of our community is small businesses, people with far less turnover than £36 million. And I wanted to help all of our community make really good choices where they brought their products from and where they brought their services from. And the only way I could think to do that was to build on the Trading Standards scheme, Buy with Confidence. It's a really good scheme and it's been going for 20 years, and I think building in modern slavery checks and balances into that scheme is a really good reassuring way for our community to make good choices about their purchasing. So what I would like to say is we've piloted this in Devon and Somerset. We want to take this nationwide. We're going to make a really big difference here in helping people make decisions about where they spend their money and what they think about the services that they're purchasing. So one of the things that's really important is this is just a very small scheme in the grand scheme of all the things that we're doing to try and tackle modern slavery, but I think this is going to have the biggest impact and make the most difference.
Another aspect of what we can do involves educating our member businesses and ensuring they know what to look out for. With Buy with Confidence members spanning a wide range of trade sectors, they will be working with and around a multitude of other businesses and may be well placed to spot suspicious activity that would bypass the authorities. We are therefore incorporating modern-day slavery awareness into the vetting process, and new applicants will be asked to sign a slavery and human trafficking statement for their business. A pro forma statement will be provided, which we hope will cover most small businesses. We are also creating and disseminating training material for all our members to help them know what to look out for and what they can do about it. Another facet of how Buy with Confidence can help fight modern-day slavery is to provide accreditation to legitimate businesses that want to show they don't just treat their customers well, but also treat their staff properly. For example, there have been issues with modern-day slavery in hand car washes, with the result that some consumers won't use any hand car washes at all for fear of what's going on behind the scenes. However, if a legitimate company wants to show they are doing things right, they can sign up to Buy with Confidence, get fully vetted by Trading Standards professionals, and then use our logo to show that they are legitimate and fully Trading Standards approved. We can then become a way for the police and others to signpost people away from those who may be committing modern-day slavery or other offences, and towards those who are doing things right. While Buy with Confidence is only one piece of a complex puzzle to try and disrupt and end modern-day slavery in Britain, with our national reach and the fact we are fully owned and controlled by Trading Standards services, it means we are well placed to do our part. Thanks to the work we've done with the Devon and Cornwall Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner and the funding they have provided, Buy with Confidence is now stepping forward as part of the fight against modern-day slavery in the UK.
I would like to see Buy with Confidence as the national scheme that is supporting our communities make really good choices about what they buy. And one of the things that's available to Trading Standards officers is training from the police, from the Gang Masters Licensing and Abuse Authority, and ways in which we can help Trading Standards officers spot the signs better. And we want to build this into your work. We think this will have such a big impact.